Most of us probably already know that most creepypasta stories aren't actually real. But are there any creepypastas based on real-life events or phenomena? In a word, yes. Yes, there are. And they're wonderfully effective stories because of it. Although Mr. Bear's cellar doesn't exist, predators like the unknown man behind it do. And although Mowgli's palace was never built, Disney has abandoned a number of attractions on their properties. Personally, I always think freaky stories are even more freaky if there's an element of truth to them. It lends them an air of authenticity that makes them all the better. That's why I'm such a fan of the next 6 stories you're about to hear. Now, it's worth noting that the similarities between some of these real-life events and their fictional counterparts don't necessarily mean that the authors of the stories themselves, whether known or anonymous, did in fact gain their inspiration directly from them. But even bearing this in mind has a notable effect on the stories themselves. It all becomes a big question of whether art is imitating life, whether life is imitating art, or whether we're all just sort of sitting in this stew of strange, mysterious, and frightening occurrences going on beneath our noses. Or, in the corners of the room, where the light doesn't quite reach. The world can be a wonderful place. However, it can also be a pretty scary one. These stories, with their roots in reality, tap into some of the most terrifying aspects of the world in which we actually live. Sleep? Who needs sleep? Number 6. Capgras delusion. Capgras delusion is a rare psychological condition in which sufferers become convinced that the people around them have been replaced by exact copies. It's a trope we see in stories time and time again. As NPR pointed out back in 2010, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is probably the most well-known example, but the scariest thing about it is that it's absolutely 100% real. The creepypasta that bears the condition's name is short, but that's part of what makes it so dang good. It tells the story of a woman who, after suffering an aneurysm, began believing her younger brother over whom she had custody had been replaced by someone else. "Nolan's gone, Charlie," she told her husband the night before she went in for surgery. "That's someone else. I don't know who he is, but it's not him. I'm so sorry." The woman didn't survive the operation, but that's just the beginning. It's what happens to the 2 remaining family members that matters in the end. Number 5. Come Follow Me and Other Lavender Town Syndrome Tales. There are a huge amount of video game related creepypastas, many of which focus on Pokemon. Why are there so many of them? I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect it has something to do with the generation in which both things, Pokemon and creepypasta, came to the fore. Creepypasta likes to hit us right in the childhood. For those of us in the millennial generation, Pokemon factored prominently in our youth, and creepypasta kicked up during the beginning of the online nostalgia push that's facilitated things like Throwback Thursday. Tons of stories exist specifically about a fictional phenomenon called Lavender Town Syndrome, but I would argue that Come Follow Me, thought to be the original Lavender Town Syndrome tale, is the most effective. Written in a style that resembles a news report more than anything else, it tells of an investigation surrounding a number of children in Japan who took their own lives after playing the newly released games Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green. According to the story, a strange tone was present in the music that played during the Lavender Town portions of the 2 games, or at least the original versions of them released in 1996. The story asks whether the tone could have had something to do with the deaths of the children, hence Lavender Town Syndrome. And it turns out that story, while not necessarily based on true events, did likely gain its inspiration from something that actually happened. When the episode Den-o Senshi Porygon of the Pokemon anime aired in 1997, 685 Japanese children and teens ended up in the hospital after a scene with flashing lights triggered epileptic seizures. Furthermore, a number of fan sites and videos on the web also claim that Come Follow Me may have been inspired by a spike in suicides committed by children in Japan during the 90s. While it's true that depression and suicide rates are so high in Japan as to make it an alarming national problem, I haven't been able to find any exact figures here that support the claim, but the rumor persists anyways. Number 4. Polybius. Another video game story, Polybius, straddles the line between creepypasta and urban legend. Generally, there isn't much actual copying and pasting going on of any particular telling of the tale, so it's not exactly creepypasta in its truest sense. It's more the plot points that get shared, putting it more in the realm of urban legend. However, this sharing has happened mostly on the internet, hence its frequent inclusion under the genre of creepypasta. According to the legend, Polybius was an arcade game released for only a month in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon in 1981. Anyone who played it was said to suffer from everything from epilepsy to night terrors. It allegedly vanished as quickly as it appeared, with rumors claiming that the whole debacle had something to do with the government. It was a test, it was a cover-up, so on and so forth. But although there are plenty of fan-made ROMs claiming to recreate the lost game, there's no evidence that Polybius itself ever existed. You know what did exist though? Tempest, an Atari game released in 1981 with which Polybius gameplay descriptions bear remarkable similarities. It's suspected that the Polybius legend may have grown out of an encounter with a faulty Tempest cabinet, becoming distorted with time until it became a literal horror show. Of course, there's not much to back up this claim either, but most of the fan-created versions of the game take their cues from Tempest, so there's clearly some kind of feedback loop going on here. Furthermore, 2 people fell ill from playing arcade games at an arcade in a Portland suburb on the same day in 1981. Brian Maru played Asteroids for over 28 hours, eventually giving up the attempt due to some stomach issues. Meanwhile, Michael Lopez, playing Tempest at the exact same arcade as Morrow on the exact same day, developed a migraine and collapsed on someone's lawn afterwards. It's a coincidence, to be sure, but it's also a weird one, and one that may have helped Polybius find its legs. Oh, and for the curious, the name of the studio that allegedly developed Polybius, Sinneslöschen, translates from German to sense deletion. Additionally, the game itself shares a name with the ancient Greek historian Polybius, who asserted that historians should never report what cannot be verified through interviews and eyewitnesses. Essentially, that seeing is believing. Has anyone here actually seen Polybius in action? I thought not. Number 3. The Well to Hell. There's no way any rational human being would mistake the Well to Hell as being real. We know what's at the center of the earth, and it's definitely not hell. It still makes for a pretty classic metaphor though. In 1989, the story claims, scientists drilling a giant borehole in Siberia were shocked to find some extremely unsettling sounds coming from the depths of the earth. Noises that sounded so much like the screams of tortured souls that the researchers abruptly closed up shop and left. There is a video that supposedly contains audio recorded by the researchers. It's pretty weird, so consider yourselves warned before you click on the link in the description. The tale of the Well to Hell had been spread mostly through tabloids and newsletters, which isn't exactly surprising when you consider how out there the whole thing is. But fun fact, boreholes probing what's under the Earth's surface are real things. Drilling on the Kola Super Deep borehole, for example, and yes, super deep borehole is a technical term, began in 1970. As of 1989, it had reached a depth of 12.2 kilometers, making it the deepest artificial point on Earth. It's located on the Kola Peninsula, bordering Russia, Finland, and Norway. Just, in case you want to see if there are any demons living down there. Number 2. The Alice Killings. I'm not totally clear why so many creepypasta tales take place in Japan. Maybe it's something about the world's fascination with Japanese culture. But the Alice Killings is one of the most memorable. Focusing on a supposed series of murders that took place in Japan between 1999 and 2005, the Alice Killings details the oddities found at the scene of each crime. Specifically, the presence of a playing card, and the name Alice written in blood. But although the Alice killings themselves never actually happened, there was a real-life serial killer who followed a similar MO. He was Spanish, not Japanese, born on April 5, 1978, as Alfredo Galán Sotillo. He became known as the Playing Card Killer after killing 6 people and wounding 3 in 2003. The reason for the name, of course, should be obvious. He left playing cards on the bodies of his victims. Eventually, the Playing Card Killer surrendered himself to the police, and he is now serving 142 years for his crimes. And finally, number 1. SuicideMouse.avi, Dead Bart, Squidward's Suicide, and other lost episodes. Lost episode stories are the bedrock upon which creepypasta is built, so it's perhaps unsurprising that there's some truth to the subgenre. I mean, no, there isn't an actual scrapped Mickey Mouse cartoon floating around under the file name SuicideMouse.avi, although there are, of course, videos of the supposed file on YouTube, like the one you're seeing right now. No, Bart never got sucked out of an airplane window and died on The Simpsons, and Squidward has never done anything other than, well, be Squidward. That being said, it's far from unheard of for cartoons to face censorship over questionable content. One of the most well-known sets of banned cartoons is what's often referred to as the Censored 11. 11 Looney Tunes and Merry Melody shorts that have been banned since 1968 for their use of offensive racial stereotypes. Beyond those, though, which to be honest should probably remain retired, there are plenty of other examples that have occurred in more recent years, and some of them are kind of weird. SpongeBob actually has dealt with some pushback for a particular episode. Sailor Mouth, which originally aired on September 21, 2001, has been accused of encouraging children to use profanity, although its creators maintain that it's meant to poke fun at what happens when kids learn words they really don't understand. Personally, I think it's more likely one of those episodes that's meant to appeal to both kids and adults, because, let's face it, bleeping out bad language with dolphin noises is hilarious. The Cartoon Network show Dexter's Laboratory also found itself in some hot water regarding a segment that was originally intended to air as part of the second season in 1997. Titled Rude Removal, the segment saw Dee Dee and Dexter each getting split in two, a polite version of themselves and a rude version. Rude Dee Dee and Rude Dexter cursed a blue streak, bleeped out of course, which resulted in the Rude Removal episode getting yanked before it could even be aired. Eventually, it did see some screen time on Adult Swim's YouTube channel. And then there's Man's Best Friend, a segment from the already controversial Nickelodeon show Ren and Stimpy. Man's Best Friend was considered far too violent to air on the fledgling network, which, given the violence level of Ren and Stimpy as it was, is pretty impressive. I wonder how much of the pushback on this particular segment was caused by the growing rift between Ren and Stimpy's creator and Nickelodeon, or whether the segment was just one more nail in the proverbial coffin that was their working relationship. But either way, Man's Best Friend didn't see the light of day until the cartoon was briefly revived as Adult Party Cartoon on Spike in 2013. Given all these real-life incidents and more, it's no wonder that so many lost episode stories have proliferated. Do you know any other creepypastas based in real life? If you do, make sure you leave a comment in the comment box below. And don't forget to subscribe for more creepypasta narrations and creepypasta content. Stay scared, my friends.